It does, you're right.
Microphone.
Morning, we're running a little behind here, but I'm very proud to introduce our incoming county supervisor, Linda Hopkins, and she's going to talk to us about important things for the county, and she's a sustainable farmer, and I noticed that the farmers love her because they have lots of signs in all the vineyards for the election, and she's doing a great job so far. I don't want that to continue. Come on up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. How's that volume? Is that about the how? Here? Over here. Okay. All right. Sometimes they have to make out with the microphone, and sometimes, if you get too close, it shrieks. So thank you so much for inviting me and for offering me a few minutes to talk to you. I actually don't want to spend too much time just talking at you, but I'd rather do a little bit of a Q&A. And you seem like a very lively group this early in the morning, so I'm very confident that you'll have lots of fun and tough questions. But I wanted to give you just sort of a quick, maybe 3-minute overview of my first 2.5 months in office. So I took office in early January. On day 8 of my term, the Russian River rose to the highest height that it had seen in 10 years. We have had 5 floods in the Russian River Valley since then, issued thousands of evacuation advisories, operated our emergency operations center twice. We've had about a half dozen major road failures, and when I say major road failures, I mean, I don't know if you saw that picture that was sort of up towards Pasadena where there was, actually it was Monterey, where there was the road that just disappeared and there was a car perched on the edge. We have had truly catastrophic road damage. That's the bad news. We also had, maybe a dozen major mudslides, that left folks stranded. We faced the first hard closure of Green Valley Road. Does anyone live Green Valley Road area? But I hope that you are happy that it is actually, the creek is actually back in its banks after weeks of endless wrangling with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I also have been hard at work on addressing the homelessness situation in Kernville. So my first weekend in office, I thought I would spend reading through my 700-page agenda packet, which I actually admit that I enjoy, in preparation for my first board meeting. Instead, I actually spent the weekend evacuating a homeless encampment in Kernville, and literally evacuated the last gentleman who was a veteran when the water was about 1 foot below his tent. So that was kind of a great, actually, glimpse into what county government can do. A lot of times we like to complain maybe about regulations, maybe about how slow government is, maybe about the 500 million potholes on our rural roads. Actually, there were 332 in a 2-mile stretch of Homewood Road. So it's pretty bad out there after this wet winter. But anyways, I had this experience where I took office on a Tuesday. On Friday morning, I said, we have a homeless encampment that's in the floodplain, and it looks like the Russian River is going to hit flood stage. So I reached out to the county administrator's office, and within 4 hours, they had ascertained that through PRMD that yes, in fact, they are located in the floodplain. Yes, in fact, they're actually located on county-owned property. And then we were able to actually sort of initiate a 24/7 emergency shelter, get it open the following morning so that the volunteers could go out and evacuate folks, and get a SAC crew, a supervised adult crew, to help with that evacuation. So in a way, it was a bit of a baptism by flood, but it was also one of, I think, the best ways that you can get started, which is showing that county government really can get out there and help people and respond in the event of an emergency. The bad news is that this winter has left our roads in an even worse state of disrepair than they had previously been. At the same time, we are facing a $3.6 million shortfall in gas tax revenue. And that's just because the cost of gas is low and our vehicles are getting more and more efficient. If we as a county don't step up and backfill that from our general fund, that's the equivalent of 18 maintenance positions that would have to be fired. So imagine how bad our roads are now in West County. Imagine if we suddenly subtract 18 crew members from the road maintenance guards around the county. It's not an option. So it's actually, even though we have a robust economy, we're actually looking at one of the tightest budgets we've seen since the recession. And it's for the gas tax shortfall. It's also because the state is looking at actually sticking us with the bill for in-home support service workers, so IHSS. This is something that has been sort of forever split between the county and the state, states looking at tightening their belt and handing this off to us, which will eventually cost us about $12 million a year from our general fund. So that's sort of the bad news, I guess. The good news is that we were able to pass a tax on cannabis, which will provide a new revenue source to address some of the concerns regarding that industry. And we also do have an increase in TOT revenue that was passed in November that we're looking to allocate. And I will be fighting very hard for that money to come back into the 5th district because we generate 46% of it countywide. And right now, we do not receive anywhere close. Oh yeah, sorry, TOT. I'm already speaking in government, right? Which is 3-letter acronyms, TLAs, right? So TOT is Transit Occupancy Tax, or the Hotel Bed Tax. So that's sort of a brief way of saying, I came in with all of the idealism in the world with a list of 20 things that I wanted to get done. And then, life happened. And suddenly I am in triage mode with people being kicked out of their homes that are red tagged due to mudslides in Monterey, and have found myself working around the clock to try and get FEMA emergency funding to facilitate some of our repairs. But it's been a wild ride, but a ride that I have loved, and I just feel very honored to have this job. And I learn something new every day, and I'm working around the clock. And what I would love to do is kind of start talking about what some of your needs are. What are the needs that you see in the community, and what kinds of questions do you have for me? So, and I will warn you, I used to be a teacher, so I'll start calling on people at random if you're all shy. So yeah, I'll be back.
I just wanted to comment that I was very happy to see that the county supervisors approved more money to PR and code enforcement, because that's another huge unfunded issue, is safe housing.
I completely agree, and that's something that we've really stepped up on. PRMD code enforcement is driven by a complaint system, but we've had a backlog of complaints, including complaints that are really legitimate public safety concerns. And we actually just passed an initiative that would grant the county council's office the opportunity to actually work with PRMD, the Permit Resource Management Department, to be able to sort of facilitate some of these major code violations that create public health hazards or public safety hazards, so that they could actually take them sort of very quickly to litigation to kind of get, basically, we wind up getting someone to come in and clean up the mess, rather than issuing endless sort of code violations that people keep getting these things in the mail, in some cases for 20 years. Meanwhile, there is sort of trash that might, be leaching into the groundwater, or pretty substantial concerns, because in some of the rural parts of the county, there are some people who essentially, unfortunately, operate junkyards, and that's really what we're trying to do, is clean this up, as well as some of the illegal cannabis grows that also have significant environmental hazards. So thanks for that note. Yeah. Here.
What's on the agenda for rental housing? I mean, that might figure into what you're talking about with the homelessness, but there's such a cry for people for rentals in this county, affordable rentals, I should say.
Yeah.
That might be some of the reason people are building the shacks in the hills too.
Very true. So the board met the end of January to have a board retreat session, which is where we kind of get out of it. It's still a publicly noticed meeting. People are welcome to attend, but we don't do it in the chambers. We kind of go and have a round table. We did this in the Round Barn in Santa Rosa because Shirley Zane is currently the chairwoman of the board. So it's usually done in the district of the current chair of the board. And we got together and we brainstormed what are the top priorities for us for this year. And affordable housing is absolutely one of them. So it's how can we look at getting affordable housing built on county-owned properties? How do we look at creating sort of revisions to and code modernization to streamline the process of development of affordable housing? So, and how also do we really, in some cases, if we're going to allow a development to go forward, for instance, we just sold, we just sold a property, or we're in the process of selling a property to a developer that's the former site of the Sutter Hospital out on Shanate. And there was a 20% affordable housing requirement ensconced in that. So it's kind of setting the bar high for inclusionary housing. It's modernizing and updating and streamlining our codes so that we can really facilitate the development of affordable housing. And then it's also putting our money where our mouth is. The board last year allocated $1 million to go into a housing trust fund, which is a great step, but at the end of the day, $1 million doesn't build very much housing. So we're in the process of starting to sit down with the city of Santa Rosa and talk about what kinds of, outside of the box, innovative funding mechanisms can we come up with to facilitate the development of more housing. But Chairwoman Zaney will tell you that her motto of the year is build, baby, build. So we've got to figure out where to do it and to make sure that it's city-centered growth happening within the urban core, which of course means it's mostly out of the county's hands. But at the same time, we need to work together because the county is actually a very large landowner, has a lot of property, and also has a much larger budget than the city of Santa Rosa. So, back.
Hi, good morning, thank you. In my neighborhood, Jameson's please. In my neighborhood, there is this rural Sebastopol. We have a what our neighbors consider a grow house inside the house. Diesel generators, smells, that sort of thing. With the passage of the tax on cannabis, there's an aspect that deals with enforcement, does it not? And then how would we neighbors, without fear, have this looked at and make sure that one, that it isn't a grow house, and then two, if it is, how does it get mitigated?
So we actually have an app and also a website. It's called SoCo Report It, and it is an anonymous. Your information is kept confidential, so your neighbor will not know from where that complaint came. Now, about a year ago, this complaint would have been fielded by the Sheriff's Department. No longer true. It will be fielded by PRMD in concert with the Ag Commissioner going forward. So, and that's what we're going to use the revenue generated by. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing, right? We just passed the tax. We'll start issuing permits probably in July. So at that point, we'll have sort of the funding revenue that we can use to actively pursue those sorts of code enforcement complaints. Because we have, again, far more complaints than we have folks to actually go out and check in on them. So.
Thank you.
Hi, Linda. Question for you. And that when I was actually at the new Sutter, I had some of the Sutter employees who know me come and say, we think the county is selling that property out there where the hospital was for much less money than we think it's worth. Does the county must have a bid process that they go through to set the price? But I have to admit, I agree with what those former people who are on that property says. It seems to me it's worth a lot more money, and there's a concern we're not getting our full amount out of that wonderful piece of property.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I will admit that I actually had a little bit of frustration with how that process was handled. Because technically it's a real estate transaction, a lot of the information was provided in closed session before I even came on the board. So I actually abstained from the vote because I didn't have equal information to my supervisors, and because, quite frankly, that information hadn't been provided to the public. So there was an RFP that went out for a proposal for developing the property that would, offer compensation to the county, and there were only 2 submissions. And I only saw the proposal that wasn't chosen the day before the meeting when the alternate developer who hadn't been selected requested a meeting with me. Which to me was not a very sort of transparent process. I would have loved to see those posted online, allow the community to vet that, allow people who have appraisal experience to come in and share their concerns. But I will say that I consulted a few sort of friends who are in real estate about the value of the property, just kind of, like I would love to get a sort of data point that's not just from staff and from these developers. And they actually thought that it was in line because the cost of demolishing all of those buildings was huge. And so basically we were selling the property as is with all of these, buildings that could potentially, because they had medical waste, because they had, laboratories, would be actually very, very expensive to demolish and then remediate. And so when you kind of factored in the cost of demolition, suddenly the value of the property went up. And also included in the sale, I will say, in the county's defense, was a free lease for a couple of the buildings that we'll still be using. The public health building that has a big laboratory with hoods, and they analyze ticks there, and they analyze a lot of different water quality, things like that. So when you kind of added up the value, it wasn't just the sort of cash value, it was also the cost of demolition and the cost of the rent. But I was frustrated, and I just felt like, that process could have been slowed down by a couple of weeks and allowed people to sort of chime in. Instead it went kind of straight from closed session into open session with not too much time in between. So, yeah.
Linda, based upon some experience that I've had, one of the issues that comes up with our county government is the concept of real estate transactions being done almost exclusively in closed session. after the fiasco of George's Hideaway, which I'm sure you're aware of out in Kernville, I feel comfortable saying that much of the concern was caused by the fact that it was done in closed session at the very last minute. Luckily, that transaction was canceled. My question is really twofold. Number one, going forward, do we have any hope of having more openness to our closed sessions, kind of contradictory in terms? And two, on the homeless situation, do we have any progress made on providing a homeless service center in the Guerneville area?
Great question. And this is actually something that I've been wrestling a lot with in the past few weeks. I kind of ran for office actually out of frustration from something that's went from closed session immediately into the board with no notice to neighbors and passed on a 5-0 vote before any of us, knew what happened. Our heads were all spinning. And I felt the same way about George's Hideaway, where there were no public meetings and the county was actually in escrow on the property. The county is actually currently looking at a property on Armstrong Woods Road across from the senior center that has 10 acres, an actual usable building, actually 2 usable buildings, an outbuilding and a house in good condition, as well as space out back where sort of very, very small homes will be developed. And so it's very exciting, and yet our first action and this is something actually I want to flesh out with county council a little more. I know that we can have it in closed session, and part of the reason that real estate transactions are always in closed session is that there could be information that negatively or positively affects the value of the property, which could then cause the county to pay more if the entire community knows about it, because it gives the seller leverage. Or it could negatively affect the value of the property, which could cause the seller to litigate us, which would cost the taxpayers potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's really why real estate transactions take place in closed session. But my sort of advocacy comes around, okay, you have that initial closed session meeting where the county decides whether or not to begin negotiations. At that point, we need to invite the input of the community and hold a public meeting. So I've already actually started reaching out to Guerneville residents regarding this new potential property. There are a lot of concerns, as you would expect, from neighbors. And so we will be holding a public meeting on March 29th at 6 p.m. at Guerneville Elementary School. And that will be after the very, very initial preliminary, the board will consider this. So basically, once we have sort of the support of all of the supervisors to consider this as a potential possibility, then we will have this big input from the community to decide whether this seems feasible or whether we need to go back to the drawing board. So for me, it's about how do you kind of make that transition from closed session to a robust public outreach, and then back into closed session to sort of decide those final details about, what's the exact price point, what is the exact escrow. But that's kind of the rationale behind closed session. And I really do want to talk to county council about it, because of course a lot of people feel understandably like government's happening in secret and they don't get to be part of the decision. So you kind of have to have 2 parallel tracks the way that things are currently set up.
We talked a little bit about this before we sat down to Elan, and that's the new Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which I have an interest in. And so there are a couple things. I don't know whether our members are aware, there's a 2014 law called the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act that requires local regulation of groundwater and of wells in this county and in the Santa Rosa Plain, the Petaluma Plain, and Sonoma Plain, or basins. And there have been closed-door meetings by a working group to develop a groundwater sustainability agency for the Santa Rosa Plain. And as we discussed, I have some concern about the proposed lack of representation of overlying owners of groundwater rights, which have they have the greatest claim to groundwater, and they're not being represented on this proposed groundwater sustainability agency. There's also the talk of pulling in to the Santa Rosa Plain, the Wilson Grove Formation, which is in Sebastopol, which does not have a groundwater shortage and does not require a groundwater sustainability agency. So what is the county doing And what are your thoughts with respect to the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which I think will profoundly affect local government and land and water use?
I completely share your concerns, and no offense to those of you who live within city limits, but one of the challenges is with the Santa Rosa Plain in particular, is that there are 5 cities involved in this, which basically means that if you don't sort of make special considerations for agriculture and rural residential users, you will wind up with a GSA, which is the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, that is formed almost entirely of cities. And so people who live in rural Sonoma County, who are most likely to be directly impacted by this regulation, they will be bearing the main part of the burden, who will not have a seat at the table. So I actually just worked to get, so one of the challenges with who gets to sit on this GSA board is you must be a GSA eligible entity, which means that either you are an elected government, so that's why the municipalities and the county count, or you are a district that has some sort of influence directly related to water in that area. So that's why the water agency counts. And they also actually did give special dispensation for our resource conservation districts, which can help bring some of that rural perspective. But one thing that we will have going forward is that there will be placeholder language that if farmers or rural well owners were to form a special district that would make them eligible to sit on this agency, that we would allow them automatically to join. So it really comes down to organizing, and I'm really hoping to work maybe even sort of in concert with, I think the RCD really sees them, Goldridge RCD sees themselves as bringing that perspective to the table, but if rural well owners wanted to form their own district, they most certainly could, and I would look forward to working with them to bring them, to help them with that process and to help get them a seat at the table. Because I think it's it's most likely, it's going to impact rural folks, and we really need to get their voice heard.
One final point, I know Scott hasn't moved this on, I believe it's a misreading of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act to think that rural well owners cannot have a vote, an actual vote in a groundwater sustainability agency. It is the law that government agencies themselves, with water and land planning authority, they're the ones that they're the only ones that can form a groundwater sustainability agency. But there's nothing in the law that would prevent those agencies from establishing a voting seat for well owners. If you're following me, the difference the difference between the two notions.
No, I agree, and they could actually be appointed, but one of the challenges is GSA eligible entities, which again, right now, are majority municipalities, get to determine who sits on the board. And so we have to convince the cities who already feel like, well, you're already represented because you have a supervisor and you have the water agency, and so therefore your voice is being heard. But I would argue that as a supervisor, I represent everyone, unincorporated and incorporated. And of course, I'm a rural farmer, so that's the perspective that I personally would bring to the table. But you can't guarantee that a supervisor will only sort of speak up for rural well owners. So I agree with you, and if you can especially encourage, because Sebastopol is at the table, encourage Sebastopol to speak up on behalf of the Sebastopol City Council members on behalf of rural well owners.
Well, that way in mind.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very fascinating. We can certainly go on for hours. But we have the door prize from Jim. You need to pick one of these and read the last 4 numbers.
All right. Last 4 numbers are 7373.
Oh, okay. And lucky you have a gift. There you go.
Thank you.
Bruce
again?
Come on, Bruce. Looking lucky. Look at that. Wow, that's a lucky guy.
What's that?
DMR.
Yeah.
I'm not tall enough, Rick, to see.
There is. Oh, gosh, no.
Let's see if I get the back of my hair right.
You have. Imagine that. Thank you for Jim Gilliam door prize. And why cartoon. Oh, here you go. This is my cartoon. See, it's a Gail Wilson thing, and the guy's saying, "It's a brick," and they're in the hospital, and all the babies are escaping. All right. That was funny. Okay, who has the joke? Rudy, do you have the clean enough for Shirley joke of the day?
I just read this in the Press Democrat this morning. It was very shocking. I'm still kind of reeling from it. But they said that 6 out of 7 dwarfs are not happy.
Okay, well, thank you, Rudy. Well, this has been fun, hasn't it? Yeah.
Are we ready?
I think we're ready. Happy trails.
Happy trails to you until we meet again.